So let's start, as we said, at Villa Park, because big game for your team of Newcastle, of course, going away to Villa in what looked like for the Champions League qualification, a bit of a 6-pointer.
Yeah.
What did you make of the game?
Villa were by far the better side. I thought the bench probably swayed it when you look at the first 11s, and both 11s were very, very strong. Villa had a far superior bench than Newcastle. Maybe a little bit of tiredness crept in. I think from a Newcastle point of view, that's the 7th time in a row they've kept the same side. Understandably, when you've won, 5 in a row, it's one of them where you think, why change your winning side? But maybe Jason Tindle or Eddie Howe, maybe, and it's all right in hindsight, maybe tweak something after the Palace win. But then again, you win 5-0 against Palace. Why do you think you have to change it with Villa? So I think hindsight's a wonderful thing. But what I would say, as you said, the Champions League race is hotting up. I mean, all the teams vying for the top 5 are all in the race.
It felt quite even in the first half. It was 1.5 time. The second half, though, Villa blew them away. They had played in midweek in the Champions League, of course, against PSG, where they came close to make almost history. That momentum seems to have carried on from the Tuesday to the Saturday. We saw a very good Ollie Watkins, who was back as a starter. He did well. We'll talk a bit later about his comments and him not being happy to miss out a bit on the Champions League. We saw, you're right, the substitution or the changes that Unai Emery made having an impact, like Maatsen at left back again.
Daniel Malen came on.
Yeah, Villa on a run. They're on a really, really good. I know they lost to PSG and they have the FA Cup at the weekend, but they're on a good run in the league.
Yeah, they're riding it, aren't they? They're riding the performance against PSG, but they're riding the form that they've been on the Premier League. They're finishing strong. My only hope as a Newcastle fan is if you fast forward to midweek, they play Man City on Tuesday. So as a Newcastle fan, 5 wins on the spin's been great, bang in form, maybe a little bit jaded going into that game, but they play Ipswich next week and Newcastle. So the chances are, and the theory is, as a Newcastle fan, forget that game, forget the Villa game, go and beat Ipswich. Hope that Man City beats Aston Villa on Tuesday. It then puts Newcastle in a great position. I believe maybe 2 wins and a draw might secure Newcastle top 5. But Villa are just riding the form that they've been in, the job that Unai Emery's done. Monchi's brought some very good players in after losing 1 or 2 as well. So they're in a fantastic position. And if you're a Villa fan, you can feel proud, but you can feel excited the way they give PSG a game, because they're probably the outstanding team left in the Champions League. I think you could stick a pin in any one of the 4. They're all fantastic sides. But in terms of what Villa done against Newcastle, really, in truth, they blew them away. I thought they were far superior.
And we said Ollie Watkins scored very early on, had a really good game. Came after the game and said, listen, I was not happy. To only play. So he said he only played 20 minutes in the first leg and 20 minutes in the second leg or something like that, but not starting. Rashford started ahead of him, and say how angry he was and that he was disappointed.
I don't mind that, you. I don't mind it.
I think you should. I think you should express your feelings anyway. But you can understand why. It could have been Watkins' biggest game of his career. Well, I guess with the Euros final and semi-final, etc. But at club level, he might never play another Champions League quarter-final in his career. He's 29 years old. So
I think it's one of them from a player's point of view. I think he was well within his rights to say what he said, as long as he says that to Unai Emery. As long as he's had that conversation, which I'm pretty sure he's had. And then you express that to the manager, well, listen, Gaffer, I'm not happy. Understand that you've got a squad with Asensio and Rashford that are trying to push you. And it's Unai Emery's big decision to play what he thinks is his best players for any particular game. But I quite like that from Ollie Watkins. I don't mind that bit of spikiness where he's coming out and he's not happy. Do you want to play that's just happy sitting on the bench? I quite like it.
Have you seen some players? So you can either react, there's only 2 ways. One, you respond with a massive game, massive performance like this one. Or you just think, you know what, I've had enough of this. And you kind of lose desire and motivation.
Good pros don't do that. Good professionals, they respond in the right way. I've been there throughout my career, not at that level where you're getting dropped for a Champions League game, but when you get dropped for a big Premier League game, the ego in you is devastated because you want to play if you go into Anfield or Old Trafford or wherever you play in the Emirates, Highbury back in the day. You want to play in the big games, but when you've been dropped, it hurts you for an hour. And then sometimes you can carry that on. If on a Friday, we used to get told on a Friday, I was a nightmare when we got told. Proper miserable, honestly. So emotional. I remember so many times at Chad Relief, if I was dropped for a big game the day after, we get told on Friday mornings, I was useless in training for the first half an hour because I was so mopey and I was so moody because I knew I wasn't playing the next day, which is like understandable. But then your professional head gets put on, and then you go, actually, there's some young boys taking my place, or I've got to respect Teddy Sheringham or whoever might be playing. And then your head kicks in. By the next day, the Saturday, your head's then back on.
Yeah.
And then you want the team to do well. But for that hour in training on a Friday, I was useless. So emotional, man.
Right, before we go back to Villa and the squad and the depth in the squad, which we touched upon a little bit earlier, I just wanted to ask you about Jason Tindle and the absence of Eddie Howe. And you as a former player, I don't know if you've been there before when your manager, have you?
Yeah.
So before you tell us about your own experience, is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Could it be a problem if it lasts too long? Does it matter? Is it all about who is the assistant taking over in a way? And if he's almost like a number one in the making, like how do you assess that situation right now?
I think in the short term, I think it hasn't been a problem, but now I think to the end of the season, it might be a problem because Jason Tindle, even in his interviews, he said he's not comfortable, doesn't want to be a number one, says he feels uncomfortable leading the side, doesn't want to do press conferences, doesn't feel as though that's his thing. He's a coach that likes to be on the grass coaching players and putting sessions on. So in the short term, it might be a problem. I think he'll be in dialogue and conversation with Eddie Howe in terms of who's picking the side, and substitutes might be a problem. That's the area where you think Jason Tindall's got to handle alongside the coaching staff at Newcastle, because I wouldn't imagine in-game that Eddie Howe will have a say on what subs come on. I wouldn't have thought if he's sitting resting up, I wouldn't have thought he's in dialogue via text or WhatsApp or whatever,
maybe not,
trying to influence Jason Tindall. So that's something that's brand new. So it's going to be very interesting,
Because you know where I thought about it at halftime of this. So this game, we said halftime is 1-1. It's still being the balance. Villa is still the better team in the first half, but it's evenish, let's say.
Yeah.
And Villa come out the second half after obviously having Unai Emery doing the team talk at halftime.
Yeah.
All guns blazing. They destroy Newcastle in that second half. There's not even there's no match even. And on the other hand, I see Newcastle and I don't know what Tindall said at halftime. But it felt like they were a bit flat coming out of that dressing room. And then that's where I wondered, I'll ask you the question to see if, like you said, maybe he's not even comfortable for those kind of halftime team talks. And against Palace, you're 3-0 up at halftime. There's no team talk to have. It's easy. Even against United, it's 1-1, you are home.
Knew you were going to win.
Yeah, you knew they were going to win. Exactly. Inevitable. So this one was maybe the first time where he was in that situation where, okay, well, what do I say or what do I do now? And I just wondered how he handled that. But obviously we were not there. We don't know.
Well, I was at West Ham when Glenn Roeder got unwell, and he had to step away, and then Trevor Brooking took over. So that was an uncomfortable period that I can try and lean on what it's like when your manager goes away. And
so how was it?
It was difficult because you feel for your manager that's in hospital, and Glenn Roeder's a super nice guy. But really, in truth, when you look at the form that we had under Trevor Brooking, it was like we were in the bottom three and we ended up going down on the last day of the season. But it was like top four form.
Really?
Like we hit form. It was nothing to do with the manager. I think maybe we were playing for Glenn, but maybe subconsciously, maybe it was something different that Trevor Brooking was saying to the players or the team selection. Team selection is the interesting one because, as you rightly say, the difference between Villa and Newcastle, when you look at how the game unfolded from minute one, really, when Villa come out the traps flying and got the early goal, and then I feared for Newcastle, but Newcastle then got it back to a draw. But towards the end of the game, they looked stronger, Villa. The bench was strong. Barkley came on, Rashford, Marlon all came on. Newcastle had to turn to Matt Targett, Emil Kraft, Callum Wilson came on.
Is that the difference, you think?
That is the difference.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Jules, that's the difference from a Newcastle point of view for the last 18 months. I hate PSR chat, but it's relative, and it's something that Newcastle are going to try and live with. But sold Minte to Brighton and Elliot Anderson to Forest, and it's hurting Newcastle because the squad depth is not there. So for Newcastle to be riding where they are and win the Carabao Cup, fighting for a Champions League spot, sitting in third as we speak, with a limited squad of probably 13, 14 players.
I was going to say 15 max.
Max, it's a remarkable job that they've done. But now I think it's getting to a point, if they are going to kick on, they're going to have to spend big time because that bench that came on was nowhere near Villa's bench.
I completely agree with you. Do you expect a big summer? I mean, can they do a big summer even in terms of transfer? I mean, I guess if you qualify for Champions League and you know that money is guaranteed 50, 60 million, whatever it is, that will help. But do you think financially they can?
I think they can because I think they're in a good place after selling a couple of homegrown players. There might be one or two more. Longstaff's maybe rumoured to be leaving as well. He's a homegrown player.
And he deserves to play. Maybe he's a Premier League player. So
and Lewis Miley as well.
Yeah,
Miley, I'd hate to see two local lads leave. I mean, one might leave. I don't think it should be Lewis Miley because he's a young boy trying to find his way into the team. Longstaff is a good player and a good substitute, but they might think he's surplus to requirements in terms of bringing that homegrown money in. But Newcastle have to strengthen. The first one they've got to do is make sure they keep Isak.
Yeah.
They can't allow him to go to Barca, Liverpool, whoever's going to come in for him. So that's the main one. Get him signed on a new deal.
What about Bruno and Tonali?
Same. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I always think this is a fascinating time of the year when you try to pick player of the year.
Yeah.
For any team, whether it's PSG, you'll struggle picking a player of the year because they've all been amazing.
Yeah.
I look at Newcastle and it's Isak, but there's a large part of me thinks it's Sandro Tonali.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's amazing. I think he's one of the best midfield players in the country.
Yeah, he will be in my top 11 for the season.
And I stand by it. I had this discussion and debate with Stevie Nicol on ESPN about the cup final. I said Newcastle got a better midfield than Liverpool. And he was like, I'm not sure Liverpool. I was like, no, I think Newcastle.
I remember.
I think that they all complement each other. The three of them are fantastic. So, yeah, again, I mean, it's keeping Bruno, it's keeping Tonali, it's keeping Isak, it's keeping Gordon, it's adding to what Newcastle need, whether it's competition for the first 11, which knocks then one or two players down to the bench, which I always think is the best way to go. Yeah. I'm never really a fan of buying substitutes because even though it heightens your sort of depth on the bench, but does it strengthen the team when they actually come on?
Yeah, that's true.
I always think you're better off trying to buy first team players.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Newcastle need. They need more numbers for sure. They need more quality if it's coming off the bench. And Villa's the best example. Anytime they can bring Rashford on, or Onana on, or Asensio on, I mean, that's the difference.
That makes a massive difference.
And
especially if Newcastle then qualify for the Champions League. As
exactly.
you said, I mean, they already are in Europe through the Carabao Cup, but if there's Champions League as well, plus all those games.
And Isak can't play every single game.
So Callum Wilson is not.
So whether it's someone like Liam Delap for £30 million, I think it'd be a good signing. I think he'd be a starter for the likes of Man United, be a starter for Everton, might be a squad player for Newcastle. But that's the type of player they need.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Isak. It's a 1 goal in 4 now. So he was in great form before. I'm not saying that he's going through the worst drought of his career. It's not. But he missed a few chances against Palace, then scored a lovely, lovely goal.
Yeah.
He was pretty anonymous in this game where it didn't seem to be really in the game ever.
Yeah.
Are you worried that he's played a bit too much, that he's a bit tired? You don't think he's him thinking about the future? And
no, I don't get the sense that he's thinking about the future. I get the sense with Isak, because I say this a little bit loosely, he's quite fragile.
Yeah.
Like, he'll pick up a little groin injury. You might not see him for a couple of weeks. I think that's due to how many games that he's played. Because when he's fit, he's Newcastle's first choice or close to it.
Yeah.
So then you can't afford. There's not many games. Liverpool are a best example where you look at Liverpool and maybe Arne Slot could have rotated some players, but when you're going for a title, you've got to play your strongest 11.
Yeah.
Newcastle are in the same boat. They've got to go from game to game every 4 days, 3 games a week, playing your best 11. Isak's not built for that.
No, that's true.
He's built for taking him out the team for a game, give him a few days rest, put him back in. So I think a little bit of fatigue, but nothing, I don't think, in terms of anything to worry about that he's thinking of Barca or Liverpool or where he might be next. Don't know if you agree.
Just to finish, we said we will discuss the race for the Champions League places in a little bit in the quick hits, but I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but will Newcastle make top 5?
Well, yes is the answer.
Okay.
I mean, I was looking at the supercomputer this morning, the Opto, and they give them like a massive percentage. They say 66 points is the number.
Okay.
So Newcastle are not far away, 7 points away.
Yeah, 7. So you said 2 wins and a draw.
Exactly.
Maybe even 2 wins.
And because of the fixture list elsewhere, they all have got, apart from Man City, difficult games.
Yeah, true.
So there's points going to be dropped. So the answer is yes.
Okay. And what about Aston Villa?
I don't know. I think Forest might dip out. We'll know more tonight. If they go to Tottenham tonight and they beat Tottenham.
We're recording before Forest play.
Yeah, if they go to Tottenham and win tonight, because they've lost the last 2, Forest, if they go there and win, I think it changes everything. If they go there and lose 3 on the spin with the fixtures they've got, they might miss out.
And as we said, there's also a massive Man City Villa on Tuesday night.
Chelsea have got hard fixtures.
Yeah, and Chelsea will play twice.
Yeah.
The team who are there for the fighting for the Champions League. So that's very exciting. We know the title is done. We know the relegation is pretty much done. But for the Champions League places, that's where the suspense is.